Hey YouTube, David Easterbrook here. Enough of the tropicals, enough of the ficus. Today we're going to be working on a native species. Hey guys, David Easterbrook here. So for the last few weeks we've been doing a lot of work with tropicals, but now for a change of tack, this time we're going to be working with a native species, Carolina hornbeam, and I hope it will inspire you. Now, I had to go out and find this material. As you know, it's really hard to find bonsai material with a lot of potential. This here, it was about a 30-year-old Carolina hornbeam. It's actually a cultivar called Palisades, and it's been sitting around a nursery for 30 years. Now, I had to cut it down to get it in the car. I'll show you what height it was. Well, this went on top over here, as you can see, and then on top of that, we had, the top was actually right here. So as you can see, the tree was about 20 feet high when I bought it and chopped it down so it could get into the car. Now, this is good workshop material because we've got a nice thick base, not too much in the way of taper, but that's not so important. This is a deciduous tree. They never have as much taper as conifers. And all in all, it's good material because it had very nice lower branches. And a bonus is with, although it's a very fastigiate tree, it grows vertically, the branches are quite horizontal and they arc downwards in a very pleasing angle. So I think we're going to be able to make a really interesting bonsai out of this material. Before we get started on the next phase of this, this demonstration, I'd like to tell you that about 2 weeks ago, I was teaching in Toronto. I was invited there by the club to do a critique of their fall show, also work with some study groups there, do some workshops, which I enjoyed very much. Thank you, Carolina, the president. Thank you all the members of the Toronto Bonsai Society. I really, truly enjoyed my stay in your city over 4 days. While I'm here, I'd like to thank Nigel Saunders, a fellow YouTuber. Nigel filmed all of my demonstration, and so if you're a follower of Nigel, you might have happened on my channel through that video. So thanks a lot to everyone. Nigel, you're a great guy. I enjoyed meeting you, talking to you about bonsai. I enjoyed seeing your work. It was just a great experience. And Nigel actually brought a book that I had written about the bonsai collection of the Montreal Botanical Gardens. Over close to 40 years ago, it's been in his possession. He brought it and had me sign it on a page where I still had a beard at that time. And I was really touched by that, Nigel. So thanks a lot. While we're on the topic of hornbeams, I'd like to show you a Korean hornbeam, Carpinus turksananovi. This one here is one in my collection. They're great trees to work with. They're actually in the same family as birches. So they're relatively fast growing. They have wonderful color in the fall. The leaves turn beautiful shades of oranges and pinks and yellows, really even very pale reds, very spectacular. I saw some really nice ones on show at the Toronto Bonsai Show a few weeks ago. What makes them so great? Well, they have this very, very whitish bark, white or gray. And not only is it whitish, but it's very sinewy. Sometimes you can even see the sap running up like tendons. It's a very, very hard wood. In fact, our native species of hornbeams are also called ironwood. because the wood is so hard, it's hard as iron, and it was used as handles and yokes for tools that had to take a lot of stress, a lot that it was a wood that needed a lot of strength for tools. So here we have these wonderful tendons going up the tree. The leaves are really actually quite small, a bit smaller than our North American species. They make lovely trees. They originally came from Korea, found growing in the mountains. And I'd say about 40 years ago, 30 to 40 years ago, when I was doing bonsai, a lot of wonderful specimens were found on the market. And why? Because they discovered that peasants in Korea had sent their children and the old folk up into the mountains for firewood, and with little machetes and axes, and they would cut back at the old trees there for branches for fodder for their fires. And they found these wonderful old trunks that had been hacked back and kept growing, and they made actually wonderful bonsai. And so that's the story of Korean hornbeams. Many of them were sent to Japan. Some were sent to North America also. Now many people are growing them in the ground because they're quite hardy, even as far as Toronto and Montreal. So you can grow them outside. Today, though, we're going to be working on a North American hornbeam. There's actually 2 species of North American hornbeams. We'll be working on the Carolina hornbeam. It's found growing everywhere throughout the northeast of United States, of North America, through Quebec and Ontario. It's a great species. They can be found anywhere. You have to cut them down. The only thing is they never or often don't bud back where you want them to. So sometimes it's necessary to graft lower branches on our North American hornbeams. So I'm going to take this off the work table now, and we'll start working with our demo tree for today. Before we begin working on the tree, I just had to remove it from its pot so that I could get at the roots better. We have all this moss growing around the trunk, and I wanted to discover where the roots are. We have to remove this moss, and I'll sort of pick away at the base of the tree with my chopsticks so that we can see the roots. It'll give me a better idea of what to use as the front of my tree. The choice of front is largely determined by root placement, but not 100%. I mean, it's always, there's a trade-off between the trunk, branch placements, where your branches are, and the base of the tree. So I have to take all of that into consideration when I shape a bonsai. Here you can see that this tree is actually growing around a dead stump. I found this tree at a nursery where it had been in the back for about 30 years. It had quite a disaster happen to it. The main trunk here died back, and a little shoot actually came up from the base and is now growing at the base of this dead trunk, which will cut away. I think it gives the tree a lot of character. When you do have an empty space here at the base of a trunk, a hollow, the Japanese call that ura, and it gives a very mysterious air to your tree. So that can be an interesting point in the bonsai. It can actually be a plus for a bonsai. It's not for nothing that this tree is called an ironwood. It would never be possible to move this trunk at all, not at that thickness and not with this hard. It's a very, very, very hard wood. So we actually take advantage of the natural features of this tree and just try to bring them out. So I'm just clearing away some of the base of the tree so we can see it better. The tree will not be repotted at this time of year. It's not a very good time of year. We're well into our mid-fall season here in Quebec. It's not a good time of year for repotting. it'll be left with this root ball and be repotted in the spring. Now, I think this tree, as I said, I was told the nursery had had it for about 30 years, and I don't think it's been repotted for 30 years. So it's going to be quite a task repotting it in the spring. I'll have to saw maybe halfway through the root ball, and then using chopsticks and washing the roots with a hose, try gradually to get as much of the old soil off as possible to let this tree breathe again. Well, that's as far as we'll go with removing the soil around the base of the tree to get at the roots. We've got some moss growing up the trunk, and I want to remove that. You never want moss growing on the trunk. It rots the tree. So here, we'll just remove that with a nice soft nylon brush. Now we can see the base of the tree. I want to remove this dead trunk, the original trunk here. So I'll saw it off and then probably clean it up with a spherical pruner. Yeah, got some of it off, not all of it. A bit more. Okay, there we go. So, now we'll prune some of the old wood away. The cut actually has to be lower so that the tree can scar over the top. The scar tissue will flow on downwards. So we've got that pretty well cleaned up. Now we can see the base of our trunk. There's a little bit more dead wood in here. We're going to shorten some of the branches, and we might even shorten the tree. We have to find the front. Obviously here, we can see the thickness of the trunk. It looks much wider, and here it's very nice because most of the scar tissue is hidden in the back. So I think this presents a very interesting front right here. So I think we're going to mark that and keep this as our front. My orange sharpening stone. The tree is actually quite tall. We can actually form a new apex using this branch here. This branch is too heavy, or this one here. I think we will go with this one though. We do have one other alternative, this side branch here. It would make maybe a shorter tree, but it is quite interesting. Let's prune back some of the branches before we decide, and we'll leave the top ones longer. Now this branch was hugging the trunk because it grew between the dead trunk and the living one. So this, we can replace it the way it's supposed to go and cut it back. Now this branch here is much too long. You want to cut it way back. Okay, now we've got a branch here that we'll use as a back branch over here. Again, way too long, has to be cut back. Now this is our defining branch. It's a really beautiful branch, much too long, quite thick too. So we have to get it way back here. This branch here, I'm not sure if we're going to keep it, but if we do, it's going to be very short. We'll go back to here. And finally, this back branch here, which actually has a few smaller dead branches. Okay. This is what we want to be our front. I do find it's quite long in this section here, quite long and unwieldy. So I do think we are going to take this side branch and make a new top. We'll actually use this part of the trunk as a stake to hold up the new trunk. I could actually wire it in place too, but we'll see. So it does have to come down lower. I find it a little bit too straight. Nothing against straight trees, but it is quite tall for the thickness of our trunk. We'll make the cut facing backwards to the back, so it'll be less apparent. Okay. Okay. Well, this is what we'll be using as our tree. So you can see that we have two big cuts, one here and one here. This will eventually be cut down much lower, this top here, this top that you can see right here. But for now, there's always a bit of dieback, and we don't want to lose this new top here. So I left a good little more than an inch. And if it does die back, it won't die back this far, and this top will be saved. We're going to start by placing the lower branches. Now, as I said, this tree is commonly called an ironwood. There's not much branch movement that I can give it, but there are some branches that should be moved out of the way, or especially the secondary branches will have to be placed. So let me get started on a couple of these branches. I'll start with this one to this one. Just lower them slightly. Now, deciduous trees shouldn't have branches that sweep downwards. They just arc down quite gracefully. We want to bring this branch slightly forward, so we're going to have to start the wire above it and this way. Okay, give ourselves enough to get to the end of this branch here. Here we go. We've got this on top, over the top here. Oof, it's too straight. I'll have to, I think I'll go over the top of this branch rather than under. There we are. Okay. Now, if we can, I'd like to give a little bit of back and forth movement to these thicker branches. We'll see if I can move them with this. This is a 5mm aluminum wire. I like to use aluminum on deciduous trees with delicate bark because it doesn't bruise them as much. Venus. We'll try to move this branch slightly forward. Okay, now we're going to wire this one here with this one up here. There won't actually be that many branches to wire, just a few secondary ones. The wiring will go quite quickly. Okay, this is the branch that was caught between the dead former trunk and the new trunk. So it's in a very awkward position. So this is why we have to wire it and move it out of the way. Okay, we'll anchor the other branch now. We always use one wire for two branches so that our wire will be well anchored. I try not to wire over any buds because now that I've cut the branch back, we'll get new budding at all of these points where there was a bud. There's an internode. It'll bud out here at least 2 or 3 buds back from the end where I cut it. This here is our back branch that I'm just putting into place. There we go. Now we'll wire up the top to be our new top. Then we'll start on the secondary branches. The top doesn't take a very thick wire. It'll take me about a 3 millimeter wire. This is going to be our new top. Now, I think many of us should be working with native trees. This here, although it's a cultivar, it is a native tree. It's always nice to have native trees in your bonsai collection. Now, I'm bringing this up for the new top. It has to be relatively straight because the rest of my trunk is straight. So I don't want any extreme curves in it. But what I do want to do is twist it a bit so that I'll have branches on both sides of this new top. Pliers here and twist it a little bit. There we go. Now we've twisted it so that we'll have branches on each side. One in the front, one on the side, one on the opposite side, one in the back, one here. And this branch, of course, will be our new apex. We'll start by doing some secondary wiring now, wiring secondary branches. And you'll start to see some interesting results. Here, we only have 2 smaller branches. We'll wire this one with about 1.5 millimeter wire. Now, don't forget, these are deciduous trees. You can't change the trunk shape very much or big branches, but they bud back well, contrary to conifers. So you'll be, in the spring, we'll get all this back budding, and in no time at all, this tree will be very full and beautiful. The advantage of working with deciduous trees. This cultivar also of Carolina hornbeam, I think actually does have slightly smaller leaves, which makes it quite a bit more desirable as bonsai material. These hornbeams, much like beeches, do keep a lot of the time their leaves in the fall, especially when they're younger. They'll keep their leaves as they'll stay brown during the whole winter, and that will protect the buds. They'll fall off the following spring when the new buds start swelling. Venus? Yes. Yes. That's a good girl. Got first branch done. Now these two are actually quite opposite, but we can bring this one down a little bit more, and I'll start wiring this branch right here. Now this is an important branch. Because it drops over the scar tissue, and it gives the tree a lot of character. Okay, now we're going to do some of the smaller branches. Takes much smaller wire. Always start your wire at the beginning of the branch, next to the trunk, and work your way toward the end, the base. Start at the base and work toward the extremity. Again, these branches are very long, a little bit spare, not much side branching, but they will all bud out all along the branch in the spring. We'll get some great smaller branches. All right. Now, I don't have many branches on this one. We've got basically a couple of them, but again, it's fine. Great expectations for the spring, so it'll all fill up. We'll get these branches done. This is a nice strong branch here. Really quite pleased with that one. Another thing that will help this tree bud out is in the spring, once it's repotted and we get some air circulating around the roots, the tree will really rise up like a phoenix, become very strong. It takes a few months, sometimes even a year, before the tree recovers from the shock of repotting. But once it does, it just takes off, and we'll have a very, very strong, vigorous a very strong, vigorous hornbeam, because this hornbeams are very, very strong trees. They grow rapidly. They send out new shoots. They're a pleasure to work with. We're getting up to the top here. Well, this is Venus here. Venus is actually the studio cat. She belongs to my son, who's doing the photography right now. She's actually, oh God, I'm trying to think of the name of her breed. I forget I'll have to repeat it 1 minute. The F4, Venus. I forget the name of her breed. What is it?
Savannah?
A Savannah, okay. Okay, well. I just introduced you to Venus. She's a Savannah. She accompanies me during the day when I'm working on bonsai. Are you people cat people or dog people? Do your cats and dogs keep you company while you're working on your bonsai? I wonder. Keep me up to date on it. We're wiring the top branches now. I might even, you can see where the front is right over here. Might even cut it down a little bit lower. I didn't have to use it as a new, a stake to hold up the trunk of the tree. It was quite thin. So now we're going to put some cut paste so that it doesn't bleed too much. I'll put a little bit of liquid to start with and then cover it with a harder cut paste. It sticks better, I find, that way. This is called Top Gin. It's actually an orange colored cut paste. It gets in the cracks really well. You don't want to use too much of this. You put on a very thin layer. I see some people putting a very thick layer. Not a good idea, because as the tree sends out scar tissue, it'll gradually push this harder cut paste toward the middle of the scar and it'll fall off. But if it's too thick, it won't be pushed off. So you want it as thin as possible. Here's the final result. We have a very nice Carolina hornbeam working with native material. This is great stuff to work with. Go out and collect some. Look in your local nurseries, find some similar material. Don't be hesitant to work with native trees. They're great, they're well adapted to our climate. So I think you should go ahead and build up your collection with a lot of good native material. Before I let you guys go, I hope you like this workshop on native material. If you'd like some more, don't forget to subscribe, send in your likes, and especially send in your comments. If you want more of me working on native material, I need your feedback, guys. So thanks a lot. Bye for now.